What's up, guys? So today I'm going to talk a little bit about mystical training, or my experience with the sort of training I went through, which is the equivalent of what a Taoist priest initiate would go through. And I'm not ordained. Maybe I will be in the future, but I've been through the training, and I want to just sort of elaborate from my experience, and then cross-referencing with other, yogic systems, what the purpose of that is. Because the main reason why I want to get this across to people, because I think what happens is, for people who are sort of sincerely desiring to understand the world, right? You will go through all these things and you do a lot of research into all these different topics. And at some point you have a sort of realization where you start seeing the world in a different way, where you realize the sort of difference between reality and concepts. And at that point, you start to realize a lot of other things may be the case that are not necessarily commonly taught in culture, at least in the culture we live in today. And that's for a reason, right? Culture is basically a training program for being effective in society. And that comes with the requirement of assuming certain concepts and ideas and then acting as if those are the case. So we basically live with all these definitions and concepts, like social roles and all this stuff, and we have all these definitions around them. And so we come to basically live in this world where we're interacting with our concepts and our ideas just as much as we are with the actual facts of experience. And then in a sort of highly cultured world, then the actual reality is that people are half living we're half living in our own collective mind and all the definitions and all the words we use and concepts, and we're half living in reality. So for people nowadays, it's very interesting, because if you look back in history and you have done a lot of research and reading of the authors who were sort of revolutionary in terms of I'm talking about nonfiction philosophers and scientists and stuff. Many of the people who have had these extraordinary breakthroughs and have become involved in certain other ways of thinking about the world, like people like Isaac Newton, Leibniz, many Francis Bacon, many of these very, very people who made tons of discoveries, but who were also involved in astrology and the occult and stuff like that. What you'll see about them is that back in those days, right, where there was so much less access to books and access to information, these people were insanely broadly read. They read all these different theories and all these different forms of philosophy, and they did all this cross-referencing until they had a certain realization. In each generation, there's always going to be people who get to this point. In the past, at least in the West, the number were fairly few and far between the people who actually got to that point. Nowadays, since all the information is basically available to anyone, it's going to start happening a lot more. And so that's why I think it's interesting to talk about the actual, the mystical training side of things. So what does it involve? Basically, you come to the point where you see this sort of sharp difference between concept and reality, because you've done so much manipulating of concepts that you then begin to see the difference between what you're actually experiencing and what you're thinking you're experiencing. And if you look at basically what the training involves, at least for Taoists, the interesting thing is that when you're training in mystical practices, you're actually training for medicine, for healing. And why is that possible? Think about this. There's two concepts which are in the zeitgeist, which most people know, which if you put them together basically gives you your answer. There's this phenomena of, like, say when there's a baby stuck under a car, a woman will like lift the car, and it's like a real thing. This extraordinary power that's within us, given the right conditions. And the second thing being the placebo effect, which is that basically 70% of medicines aren't even ones that we've used are not as effective as the belief that they're effective, right? So if you put those two together, we have this extraordinary strength within us, and that our minds are basically, the belief in our healing, in something giving us healing, is as powerful as most medicine. Then you get the idea that with the correct training, with the proper use of mind, then you can unlock pretty extraordinary powers within yourself. So mystical training, right? The training for healers, trainings for energy healers and herbalists, and all of these things. How is that related to the break away from conceptual thinking? Is that if you say go back a long time, right, to when we were just sort of living in the woods, there was no guidebooks to tell people which herbs to use. So people had to figure out how people had to discover this stuff. In order to discover that required a certain level of stillness and intuition. It required a certain level of concentration and ability to really perceive what's going on, right? So that's really the first step of what mystical training is about. Meditation is a big part of it, and health, the physical body. So you start with physical training, which is, it's not like, well, no, what's it called? Actual exercise is part of it, but there's more. It's a lot to do with stretching and a lot to do with meditation, but it's a lot of repetitive stretching and conditioning of the body to loosen up all of the tendons, the fascia, the muscles, to get the muscles strong but not like overly bulky, the tendons very loose, and all the pathways connecting all your vascular system and everything working at in perfect function. So all your organs are getting full energy, your brain's getting enough energy, all these things, so that your energy is flowing. Because at that point, if you think about this, the majority of all thoughts are just and feelings and everything are just energy firing in different places at different times for different reasons. When your body is like, because we live in this sort of, often a lot of the time we're sitting down, or if you even longer time ago, people who do like hard physical labor, your body gets, because of repetitive motion or repetitive sitting in non-motion, all these different points in your body get basically, everything just picks up a pattern. It goes as it goes. So if you're sitting with your back bent every day for 12 hours, then that bend point is going to get hardened and hardened and hardened. It's just like it's building up each day is like building up a new, it's hardening of a habit and your body takes on the same way your mind and your physical behavior. So you have to, once you remove all that, then the ability of the actual concentration of your mind to pass and also to sense things goes up like tenfold, if not more. And at that point, if you also are practicing meditation, but in early stages, it's just for stillness. It's just your ability to concentrate, pure concentration. It's called Raja Yoga. There's a really good book on even on YouTube called Raja Yoga, and I would suggest using that if you've never done it. Zen single pointed meditation, where you just stare at something. Insane how much that can change your daily life and your ability to concentrate, get shit done, and all that in a short period of time. Well, in a few months, or even in a couple of weeks, if you really if you actually have the pure intent to sort it out. So yeah, first it's your physical body stretch, your basically overall holistic flexibility, health, and then your concentration. Those are that's like the ground level. And then it starts getting into more higher levels of understanding energy and how to move it around, understanding the different types of energy and how they're related to our physical body, right? Because all of our emotions, if you feel your different emotions, they have a different charge to them, and that charge can actually be located back to different organs. And I'm not going to get into all the different theories about it, because it's no point right now, unless I'm not training anyone. I'm just explaining it. And once you learn to understand these different forms of energy, then you start to see these different larger scale patterns and characteristics that recur through time, and that give you a lot of insight into what's going on and what's going to happen. Because if you understand the way that, with different emotions, there's a sort of a cycle of from fear to anger, all these different things, that you can see how the different energy forms and different emotions as we feel them, but also how these things manifest in life. And these same, with the underlying principle that these emotions that we feel also are manifest as larger energy forces in the world, right? Because there's only 7 emotions, and this is the funny thing is, that's been said in Chinese medicine for thousands of years, and it's also said in science today. But they see these as larger patterns that can be, you can put different other manifest things in reality into these different categories or different mixtures of these things. So at that point, this is after a couple of years of training, you've done, your body's in good shape, you're very concentrated, and you're starting to learn about the energies. Then you start to learn different forms of meditation, which are basically I'm going to get into now, because we talk about Kundalini awakening and stuff like that. It's the same process in the Taoist system, and it's the same thing. Even like you can read it into the Bible with Christianity, which is, once you learn about your concentration, you get that straight, your body's in good shape. You start to understand the nature of the different energies, and you start to accumulate that energy, which at least in Taoism, you accumulate it low down in your Dantian, which is they call it the Hara in Japan, and it's like your lower behind your navel. It's something like, I don't know what they call it in India, but it's your lower energy center, your life force place. You start to absorb energy daily using qigong and stuff. You accumulate it there, and you rotate it. You move this energy ball, and then over time that starts to move, and it moves up, and it goes straight out the top of your head, and then you see some crazy stuff. And it's not, like, I'm telling you, much more than like, yeah, DMT like, but much more, a lot more comprehensible and satisfying, actually. Honestly, like I've tried drugs, and they're great, I guess, for at a certain point in your life. But you can get a lot further just using your mind and your concentration and your actual sorting your life out in a way where you can focus on this stuff, or at least resisting the will to just go and focus on the external world. And if you're the type of person who is an internalized person, then yes, it's pretty extraordinary. So we're at 10 minutes, and I'll just kind of maybe try and keep this one a little bit brief. So it's basically, what they all have in common is a few things. First, the person has to be ready, right? The person has to have already done a lot of research and done a lot of looking and seen that, actually, there's a certain thing about all the different mystical schools that they have in common, and you can see that, oh yeah, that's true. It happens after you do all this stupid research. It's not stupid, it's good to learn about the world and different ideas, but there's a certain point where you say, oh, okay, this is all just words, and these words don't really have any bearing to reality after a certain point. Then start the training, you sort your health out and your flexibility and eating well and stuff like that, because you need to it's purification. You need to clarify your interior body so it's at optimum level of sensitivity. Then you start practicing the meditation, and you generate this internal energy, which is also external energy. It connects to the whole universe and everything, to the point where it goes on the move. And then you've reached this certain higher stage in your practice, right? And that's, there's lots of words for it, and we don't need to talk about them, because that word that they use to describe this stuff has basically been captured, right? Because the idea that the Buddha and Jesus Christ were the only people who ever did this is basically the idea. It's a myth, right? They create a myth of this person who's so extraordinary that they did this thing, so you fail to see it all around you, and there's millions of people who are like that, and it's not really that big a deal. And whether people can get there without the training, I don't know. I think you probably can. But yeah, so that's it. What to take away from this? If you are interested in this stuff, I would say start with your body, get your health straight, and meditation, get your concentration straight, do all research, follow your mind to where it goes, follow this sort of will to follow the truth, until you get to the point where you're like, this is all a bunch of crap. And then message me, or look for a Taoist, or you'll be able to see the right person and ask very kindly if they will teach you the way to do this meditation, and you will see massive, extraordinary changes in your life. So that's what's up. I hope you guys are having a great day. Like it, follow it, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.